Good evening, everyone, and thank you for coming to this event featuring a stellar panel led by featured author Waj Ali. I'm Andrea Grossman, the founder of Writer's Block, now in our 26th season. I want to thank the Abell of Los Angeles for their co-sponsorship of this program tonight. The moment I heard about Waj Ali's new book, Go Back to Where You Came From, I went wild. Because all Americans come from somewhere else, whether 1 or 2 or 3 generations ago, or perhaps they hitched a ride on the Mayflower. And each of us felt our families hurt and pain when they heard the bitter order to go back to where we came from. Waj's book is about the enduring mess of Islamophobia, especially when directed to Americans who were born and raised here, who run into the sort of racism all the time, personally or through depiction in the media. The book is really funny, to be sure, but Waj makes you wince at the same time. Its electric current is about racism, about building community and belonging. It relates to all of us, whatever we are. You'll have questions, so email us at writersblockpresents.com. What a panel Waj has assembled here today. Salam Al-Mariyati is the president of the Muslim Public Affairs Council, a national nonprofit dedicated to improving policies that impact American Muslims. Maz Jobrani is an author and a comedian, one of my favorite comedians ever, and you hear him on NPR's Wait, Wait, Don't Tell Me. His movie from several years ago called Jimmy Vestvood is utterly hilarious. He's also the author of I Am Not a Terrorist, but I've played one on TV. Shohreh Aghdashloo is an Academy Award nominated and International Emmy Award winning Iranian American actress who adds such elegance and gravitas to this group. You've seen her in House of Sand and Fog, The Expanse, Star Trek Beyond, and she'll be in season 2 of Apple TV's The Flight Attendant. Rabia Chaudry is a hugely popular podcast host, producer, attorney, and author of the bestseller Adnan's Story, based on the murder trial of Adnan Syed, which created an international storm on the podcast serial. It was she who essentially created that particular season of Serial. Her podcast, Undisclosed, is the biggest podcast in the world dedicated to wrongful convictions. Leading all of these talented people in conversation is Tonya Mosley, an award-winning journalist who hosted and is now a correspondent for NPR's excellent show, Here and Now. She also hosts a podcast called Truth Be Told. Waj Ali, our featured author, is a performer among many other accomplishments and a guy who grew up in the Bay Area with a lot to say. He does what comedians do best. He delivers truth about his and our collective American experience in this funny and incredibly searing book, Go Back to Where You Came From. Go to our website, writersblockpresents.com, to find the link to Skylight Books to get a signed copy. You'll have questions, so email us at reservations@writersblockpresents.com. And I want to introduce Salam Al-Mariyati, who will say a few words. And Salam, welcome to Writer's Block.
Thank you. Thank you very much. It's an honor to be among such great people and all accomplished. And I just want to say a few words about Wajahat. Wajahat actually came to us about 15 years ago, before he was famous, and he spoke at our convention. And at that time, he hadn't written a book yet. He wasn't as popular as he is now, but he really influenced the crowd and showed remarkable intelligence in his analysis. And that's really what this is all about. Too often, we talk about stereotypes of Islam and Muslims. And one of those stereotypes that you find on TV, unfortunately, is that we're a bunch of bumbling idiots. Well, Wajahat shatters that stereotype. And he is remarkable in his ability to deliver his quick wit and his analysis. And we're also proud of him and as a voice that represents the voiceless for so many Muslims and so many people who are disenfranchised and do not have that voice. So I'm really proud to be a part of this. And he is a brother, and he makes us all shine when he speaks on television or radio or anywhere. So thank you very much, Wajahat, for letting me be a part of such a historic and memorable event tonight.
Tanya.
Wonderful. Thank
Yep.
you, Salam. And thank you, Andrea. I am so honored to be in conversation with these amazing guests around Waj's book, in part because there really are very few spaces where different races and nationalities can come together and hold space for each other. So thank you, Waj, for inviting me. Fun tonight. We only have an hour, which is no time. So I am going to host this conversation game. Because why not? Also, we're taking a page from Waj's book, so to speak, using humor to laugh to keep from crying, as my mother always says. It's a tradition that all of us know all too well. But before we start this game, I want to ask each of you all to do something. In preparation for this talk, I looked up each and every one of you and watched videos of other interviews you've done. And one thing that is never consistent is how people pronounce your names. And believe it or not, I can actually relate because I have the most basic name. And yet, for some reason, many white people consistently want to spice it up. It's Tania, it's Tonya, it's Latanya. So let's go around the room and have each of you tell us the funniest pronunciation of your name you've ever heard, and then the correct way to pronounce it. And I'll start with you, Waj.
Well, Latanya, thank you for the question. I mean, ethnic names, I don't know, too many syllables. So first and foremost, thank you everyone for joining us. I have to say that on behalf of my parents, because I'm a good child of immigrants. If you were here in our home, we would feed you chai. Thank you to Salam and Andrea for those amazing introductions. Now I feel like I have to be brilliant for 50 minutes. Thank you. And many people, this is my favorite, Wajah the Hut, which was hilarious. Sir Wajalat, Warbalat, whatchamacallit, and what's your ass, which never gets old. If you're American, you block it up. It's like Wajahat. If you're my mother, it's like a katana, Wajahat. And if you're just everyone and you're exhausted of 3 syllables, Waj.
Yeah. Sir Wajalat. That's my new name for you. Okay. Shohreh.
Well, it's usually when they see me, because they're so afraid, mortified to call me because they don't know how to say my name. They're like, you. I'm like, yes, thank you. But the best one of them all, I was sitting in a car. The driver was taking me to the studio. And he said, what is your name? I said, Shohreh. He goes, nice to meet you, Shirley. I said, excuse me, my name is Shohreh. He goes, yes, I understand, it's Chevy. I'm like, I tried for the 3rd time and I said, actually, it's Shohreh. And he goes, I know, it's Shirley. You have accent. And I'm like, okay. I take it.
I'll take
it's
it.
Shirley. It's Shirley. I love
Yeah.
Shirley. I'll take it.
Yeah. Maz.
Well, both my first name and last name get skewered. So Maz is Maz, but a lot of times people call it Maz. And I go, no, it's Maz, like Lamaz, Mazda, Maserati, Mazatlan. And they go, okay, Maz. I go, no, they don't get it. And then Jobrani, they say Jabroni, which is what wrestlers call each other. But my favorite one was when we perform at the Comedy Store, the comics before the next comic, we introduce each other. And so one of the first times I was performing at the Comedy Store years ago, the performer before me turned around and asked the piano person, who's the next performer? And he said, Maz Jobrani. And they thought they heard Monster Bunny. So they thought I was going to show up in like a bunny outfit and be like, hey, everybody, how about some carrot jokes? So that was my favorite, Monster Bunny.
Somebody's got to give you like a little hip hop name, kind of like, Sir Wajalat.
He's not a
jam on it, Jobrani.
He's not a player. He just Wajalat.
Yeah,
this is like the Wu-Tang name generator right now. We should I'll be Sir Wajalat. He'll be like Monster. We have Shirley, and then whatever Rabia's name is, and then you're Latanya, I guess, our manager.
Latanya is nice.
I know. Last but not least, Rabia.
Yeah, I mean, I get Rabia a lot, which, okay, it's close, but, my name lends itself to a lot of like rabid, like when I was a kid. The weirdest one was probably, I've been called Rabin a couple times, like Yitzhak, as in, which Nothing, none of that computes. But yeah, I mean, most people are somewhere in the ballpark because there's literally 5 letters. Come on, people, how hard can this be?
How
But
hard?
Chaudhry is hard. Chaudhry is, see, I'm saying Chaudhry the way like a South Asian would say Chaudhry. So it's Chaudhry, you know what I mean? They turn me French, all kinds of things. I'll take it. It's fine.
Wait,
Yeah.
Tanya and Rabia, can I say that Andrea emailed me earlier today. He goes, "How do I pronounce her name?" And I'm like, "You just gotta call me." And so for 5 minutes, the phone call was like, Chaudhry, and Andrea's like,
Chaudhry.
Chaudhry. I'm like, Chaudhry. And it was just like, I wish we could film that skit.
There you go.
Okay, so let's get to our game, okay?
All right, I'm
I'm
ready to
going to
lose.
I'm going to use chapter titles or subjects from Waj's book to explore with each of you your shared experiences. And your task, after you've answered the question, is to ask that question or a variation of it to one of your fellow panelists. And of course, I expect nothing less than any or all of you to jump in whenever you like to answer that particular question. We all got it?
Got it.
Okay, and for those watching, a reminder that you can ask this amazing panel a question. You just have to email it to reservations@writersblockpresents.com, and we'll get to them during the latter half of this event. Okay, so I want to ground this conversation in something that all of you have explored in your work in various ways, and you actually brought it up just a few moments ago, Waj, and that's through the people who are not here on this Zoom room with us, and that's your parents. It's a reality for most immigrants that you can't really tell your story without breathing life into your parents' story. Why is their origin story in this country, Waj, so integral as a through line in telling your story as an American?
Oh, look at that. That's a deep, profound NPR question. And it's a good question. Look, we all come from somewhere, right? No one is an island, even though if we think that we are alone, everyone has given some time investment in shaping us and loving us and teaching us how to speak, how to clothe ourselves. And for many of us, it was our parents. And for me, I'm first generation, born and raised in America, but the origin story goes back to my parents, right? So how do I trace my roots to this country? My father came here post 1965 as a young student, Pakistani American. He ditched the kurta and the shalwar kameez for bell bottoms. I thought my father was born bald with Docker khakis and glasses, but I saw a photo of him. If you want to ever be traumatized, see your parents' photos from like the early 70s. My God, he had like hippie hair and he listened to the Doobie Brothers. And I'm
Why
like,
didn't you put that picture in your book is all I'm saying.
Because my father has burned all of them. That's why. I'm like, was my father cool? No. And so it's very important to honor the chain, right? We all come from somewhere. You have to honor the ancestors, right? I would not be here if it was not for my parents. And I also in the story decide to honor my grandparents in the way I could, because we had a very old school traditional like setup, right? Really quickly, a lot of people say, you're an immigrant, you want to assimilate, burn the boat. My parents brought the boat inside the home. And so I was raised with my dadi and dada, my grandparents, and my parents all in the same home. And the story goes, and just a quick plug for education, which is under attack. Back in the day when my grandfather made a little bit of money in Hyderabad, India, pre-partition, he decided to save that money to educate his 5 children. And because my father was educated, post 1965, once they had that one Willy Wonka ticket opportunity to come to America, that education allowed him to basically ride that diploma to America with his brother. They came here with nothing, worked themselves up from the bootstraps, brought Dadi and Dada, and then I was born as a fob, husky pants wearing kid in the Bay Area, California. And fast forward 4 years, I'm getting to talk to all of you.
You got to ask you have to ask one of your
Here's
fellow...
again, Shohreh. All right.
Yes,
I just want to ask a question of the Secretary General of Expanse. So I've done my job. My nerd cred is established that I asked you a question. Before this panel began, you were telling us this amazing story of how you came to America. And you were saying how you literally, I'm using the word as it's meant to be used, drove from Tehran all the way around from Turkey, then to Europe, and then you eventually made your way to London and here. And so your roots are different from mine. I came here as the product of immigrants. You came here, I'm assuming, as originally a refugee in another country. And so how do you, as now a third world traveled, worldly actor with footprints in so many different countries. How do you trace your roots back to your parents as an American Iranian actress who has had such a unique origin story?
Now that's an NPR question. All
And
right.
that's an
let's
NPR
go.
question, exactly. But I'm sure we've all seen The Lion King. There's a scene in it, Simba and the Lion King. They are by the lake. Simba is upset, telling his father that what's going to happen to him when the Lion King dies. And the king says, don't worry, Simba. Take a look at the stars in the lake. I will always be in here. And he puts his finger on his forehead. That is how I have always felt about my parents, ever since I left my birth country and left my parents behind. That no matter what, they are with me. They were educated people. My mother was an avid reader, in love with Western literature. All I heard when I was a child was Daphne, Charlotte, Emily Bronte's sisters, Jane Austen. And that's why my daughter's name is Tara Jane, Tara for Gone with the Wind and Jane for Jane Austen. And my father was an avid reader too, but he was a very noble man, and he cared a lot about our education, and he helped us with our homeworks every single night while my mother was reading Pride and Prejudice. So that kind of living, upbringing, being raised in a normal, modern, so-called modern family in the Middle East made me who I am. And when I left Iran, I felt like they're both living inside me. They are with me. And every time I had a question or I needed an advice, I would have called them from 1,000 miles away and asked them the question. But the funny thing is that I still do that. I've lost both of them, one to dementia and one to a heart attack. But still, every time I'm alone, I don't feel alone. I know they are with me. I talk to them. You may laugh at me, but I say, Ma, Baba, come in, please do sit down. I have a question. Should I do this or should I not do this? And then I will just sit down, quiet, wait for an answer that will come to me. That's how I feel about my parents and my upbringing and the culture that I was brought up with. It's all with me, inside me. All I need to do is to be faithful and to always be grateful for having such an amazing parents who allowed me to become who I wanted to become.
Sorry, I just got mesmerized by listening to you talk about that, and also being still with yourself to be able to hear those messages from your parents, and which are like it is very important for us to be still, and oftentimes we can't because there are all the noises around us, but to be still does tie us to our ancestors in such profound ways. This next question is for you too. And I'm gonna look, my cheesy little okay, here we go. Chapter 3, do something useful. In Waj's book, he says for Pakistani immigrants, there are 3 occupations that are deemed the Holy Trinity: a doctor, an engineer, a businessman, and everything else falls under the category of failure. And none of you on this panel are any of those things. Shohreh, in your memoir, you say that your parents had, as you called it, practical ambitions for you, and yet you chose to go into the entertainment industry, which in many ways is a profession that is built on stereotypes. And it strikes me that you may have experienced otherness in 2 ways: subverting the cultural norms of what you should do, while also pushing beyond America's perceptions of who you should be and what roles you should fill. Do you see it that way?
Absolutely. According to Salon, if we want to shatter the stereotype, we need to work on it. We need to tell our stories that would represent our people in a right way and not necessarily making a mockery of them. It all depends on us. When I left my birth country, when I started living in other countries, first thing I thought of was that, hey, I am not one of their children. I am an adopted child. Therefore, as an adopted child who's been lucky to land in this beautiful, vast country, where dreams come true. I have to work harder, as Wajahat refers to it a couple of times in his book, that we need to work harder, we need to be stronger, we need to prove ourselves.
Shohreh, I've
Is it
lost.
bad internet? Jesus, Calabasas, I tell you. No, can I hear you now? Let's see if we can hear you now.
Yes, can you
I
hear me
can't.
now?
Yes, we can.
I'm terribly sorry about that. Yeah, as an adopted child, because I've always felt that way when I left my birth country. As an adopted child, I've always felt that I need to prove myself. Though maybe I didn't have to prove myself if I was living in my birth country working. But here, I have to work harder. I have to be stronger. I have to be more understanding, susceptible to different, incidents that may or may not happen to me. And that I think on its own will make you to choose your path and just act accordingly.
Mm.
If you don't feel like an outsider, if you don't feel, and this is my personal experience, if you don't feel like a refugee per se, if you feel like a human being with an international human being, a universal human being, not necessarily bounded by the borders or boundaries, but a universal human being whose universe is his place, can live in and enjoy life.
Maz, it strikes me, I'd love to know, as someone who is also in the entertainment industry, how do you navigate those two things? That otherness of choosing a path that perhaps your parents didn't want you to choose. They want you to be a doctor or something like that. And also the perceptions of you in Hollywood and who you should be.
I disagree with Shohreh. Shohreh, the universe is not ours. We should have all been doctors or engineers. We're all a disgrace. No, I mean, I grew up in America. I was born in Iran, grew up in America. And as Waj has mentioned, our parents, I always say immigrant parents in general, want lawyer, doctor, engineer. And when I fell in love with being on the stage at the age of 12, and I loved Eddie Murphy when I was a kid, I said, I want to be like that guy. My parents they started pushing me the other way from there. They were like, you should be a lawyer, and then you can do comedy on the weekends. And I was like, okay. And then I went to undergrad. I studied political science. And then I thought maybe I studied a year abroad in Italy, and I thought maybe I'd be a professor. But all of this to say, I think a lot of people, not just kids of immigrants, but a lot of people are looking for that thing that is their passion. And hopefully you have parents who see it and they go, wow, you really love painting or biking or whatever it is, and they encourage you. But even if you don't have those parents and you do have this community that's pushing you in another way, hopefully for me, it took to my mid-20s to have the realization that we live once. You're only here once. So you got to do it, or you're going to be 50, 60, whatever it is, and go, I never went for it and I never will find out. So that's when I had my epiphany moment. And I'll be honest with you, the moment I decided to do this professionally, it felt like the whole world opened up to me. And as you said, then you go into Hollywood and they go, oh, you're Middle Eastern, great. Can you say, I will kill you in the name of Allah? And you're like, no, I want to be the doctor. And they go, great. And then you can blow up the hospital. You're like, no. So that's been a little battle as well. And early on in my career, doing plays in school, I got to play all kinds of parts. I played Little Abner. I played Batman. I played just regular different people. But then when I got into Hollywood and did a couple of those parts, that's the title of the book, I'm Not a Terrorist, but I Play One on TV. That comes from playing a terrorist in a Chuck Norris movie of the week and feeling really bad about doing it. Like I did it, and I honestly thought that maybe I can humanize this character. And I was playing an Afghan in America who was going to blow up a building, and I went in for the wardrobe fitting, and they go, here's your shirt, here's your pants, here's your turban. And I said, no, Afghans in America wouldn't wear turbans. I go, that's maybe the Taliban over in Afghanistan, but in America, I don't think he'd wear a turban, especially if he's trying to lay low and blow up a building. And they were like, okay, I'll talk to the producer. And the next day when I went to my trailer to get my clothes, there was shirt, pants, and what looked like a scarf. And I go, oh wow, you talked to the producers and they want me to wear a scarf. They go, no, that's the turban. We just undid it. You got to do it back up again. So that was when I realized, you know what, I don't want to do these types of parts anymore. And I told my agents no more terrorist parts. And I got one more on the TV show 24, but that was only because they got in touch and they said, he's a terrorist who changes his mind halfway through the mission. And I thought, oh, the ambivalent terrorist. Yes. I could do that. So I played that was the last time I did a terrorist part. And ever since then, I've said no. And it's good. Saying no in Hollywood, or I think in life, when you say no to people, I think it strengthens you in your own eyes and in their eyes. So say no, people. Say no.
Just say no.
Just say no.
Or be a moderate terrorist.
Or be
a moderate terrorist.
The ambivalent terrorist.
That's right.
Can I ask one quick question of Maz? Maz, did you live or die in the Chuck Norris movie?
Waj, you really have to ask that question. I mean, I don't even need to read the script. None of us make it to the end. And here's the quick story on that. So they had, like, I'm pretty sure, if I'm not mistaken, there was supposed to be a whole fight scene between me and Chuck. And I think like the day of when they were blocking it, he's like, I'll just shoot you. Like, I'll just shoot him. And then they had me do like, they had stand-ins for my stunt double who was supposed to get shot and fall back. But they came up to me. There were all these stunt guys. They go, you could do it, right? And I was like, is it dangerous? They're like, no, it's not dangerous at all. Once you get shot, just go backwards. And when you go backwards, make sure you tuck your chin in because you might hit your head. It would crack open. Don't crack open your head. Oh, and as you go down, you're going to be holding a gun. That's a heavy gun. Don't land it like this. It might break your bones. So I'm like, what? And then they go, don't worry. We're going to have a cushion behind you. You can land on the cushion. I go, great. We did like one rehearsal and the guy goes, no, the cushion's in the camera. Take it out. No cushion. Let's go. And I was like, wow. So I'm running and I'm saying like whatever, Allahu Akbar, whatever I say. And he's like, ta-ta. And I'm like, head down. Arms in, look normal. I must have looked stupid dying. And the truth is, after all of that, when you watch the actual film, don't watch the film. It's a horrible film.
I'm just thinking right in this moment, I got to watch this.
You don't, it's the worst movie
gonna go watch
ever.
It after this.
It's called The President's Man, A Line in the Sand. It's the worst movie ever. But when you watch it, after all of my stunt work and thinking I'm going to crack my head open, there was like a millisecond of me like getting shot and dying. They didn't even need me. Like it was horrible. So don't do it.
Just say no.
Just say no. Am I supposed to ask a question of Rabia now?
Well, I'm going to ask her a question.
Oh, okay, even better.
And then
Maz being bossy. Calm down.
She's going to take it, and then she's going to take it.
Oh, I see. About this game.
Okay.
But chapter 7, become a domestic crusader. Back in 2001, October 2001 to be exact, when Waj was still in college, he began writing a play called The Domestic Crusaders, and he says the process saved his life. Just the act of bringing to life these characters and a universe that couldn't be taken away. It felt like power. Rabia, many of us know you from your groundbreaking work and your HBO series, Adnan's Story. Can you relate to Waj's experience and what has been one of your domestic crusades?
Look, I mean, Wajahat writing that in October 2001, we were all kind of spinning out of control then. I mean, that was a really difficult time for the American Muslim community. I was in law school at the time. And I was one of very, I don't know if I knew another, to be honest, Muslim in law school or South Asian in law school, because they were all successful in getting into med school and I wasn't able to do that. So there was a panic. A lot of people don't realize that at the time, very shortly after 9/11, George Bush enacted, Department of Homeland Security was given birth to. It came into existence. There was this new law that required all Muslim men from 27 different Muslim countries to go and register at the INS or at immigration, and many did not reappear. They weren't allowed to take a lawyer. Nobody knew where they were. There was like actual panic in the community. So I think all of us were looking for a sense of just trying to have some control in that moment, and really, in many ways, kind of not doing a great job at it. I mean, like, I admire MPAC and I admire all these organizations that came into being around that time, knowing that they had to defend our community. But for some reason, we couldn't get the messaging right. Islam as a religion of peace wasn't working. Nobody was buying it. It was hard. It was bad. I mean, like, it was not a good time for all of us. And no, just like Wajahat said, we all became ambassadors for Islam, from hummus to biryani to Tehran to, like, I mean, like, stuff none of us knew about. We're all like basically kids trying to figure it out and like give interviews in the media and respond to all the accusations about our community. My domestic crusade, I mean, has been very much shaped by 9/11, because I wanted to be a corporate lawyer and make lots of money, but I ended up becoming like an asylee, refugee lawyer, an immigration lawyer, and civil rights lawyer because of what was happening to our community. So I became a broke community lawyer. And yeah, my domestic crusade has been just trying to do my best to help represent people who have no power here. The systems are overwhelming large. So I do a lot of criminal justice work now. I'm doing mostly innocence work now. It's just a different flavor of the same thing. These big institutions and people who have no power trying to fight them alone. So that's my domestic crusade.
Can I jump in real quickly? When you said biryani, it reminded me of another name thing. I was doing a big show in Dubai one time. The show, I had my name, picture, everything. And there's a video of people driving into the parking lot, and the guy working the lot was an Indian guy. And the lady goes, "Which way for the Maz Jobrani?" And he kept saying, "Biryani?" And he goes, "No, Maz Jobrani." He goes, "You want biryani?" And it was like this. So thank you for reminding me.
The reason why we have Maz Jobrani is because he makes Pakistanis very hungry. That's the reason why he's part of this illustrious panel.
If you're going to get confused with any food, biryani's the food you want to get confused with, definitely.
Yeah,
Delicious.
I'll take it.
It's delicious.
Okay.
Oh, wow.
So in chapter 2, Say Hello to America's Oldest Friend, Waj takes on what he calls the whiteness, and he defines it as the ability to inspire fear and anger that is so strong it corrupts many well-intentioned people, including people of color, to, for instance, vote for candidates like George Bush and Donald Trump. It's such a domineering force that we know we give into it, aka assimilation. Maz, how has this played out for you, the quest to become a model American?
Oof, it was a disaster. First of all, I grew up in Marin County, Northern California. So a lot of my friends were white dudes, and I had a handful of Persian friends, and I had like 2 black friends. But it was very white. I love baseball. I did a lot of I collected baseball cards. There was a lot of like that kind of stuff. And I did not grow up with a lot of Persian like music or movies or anything. Matter of fact, I remember Shohreh had this great play that she and her husband Hushang Tozi were touring with, and I remember being in college and going to see it at the Palace of Fine Arts. It was called Bouye Khosh Ishq, the beautiful smell of love. Mm-hmm. And it was one of those like, oh my God, this is so cool. And I felt like I was missing out on my culture a little bit. But I will say the second part of what you just said, because I feel like I have now embraced a lot of my own background, but also just I love diversity. So when you come to my shows, I love having people from all over the world. Like my special on Netflix, there's moments where like I there's a whole bit where I do like I say, how do you say fart in your language? And I go around the room asking people how they say fart, and it was I had a blast.
Yeah,
the highbrow stuff, the intellectual stuff,
highbrow, the writer's block type stuff. You know what I'm saying?
This is why Maz's parents came to America for that.
Exactly.
Eddie Murphy would be proud.
Fart jokes in multi languages, but the thing that shocked me was what you just said, the amount of people from the people of color or people from these different immigrant backgrounds who embraced somebody like a Donald Trump. When the election was happening, my own like friends and family were going towards this guy, and I was going, what is going on? And there was a lot of friends of mine who were like, well, he's right about, I said, what about, the Muslim ban? And they go, well, they should be banned. And I go, you're Muslim, you came, you're an immigrant. And they go, yeah, but, and they always have excuses. There's no like legit excuse. Like, yeah, well, when I came, it was a different time. There weren't, terrorists coming across the border. I was like, what are you talking about? Terrorists coming? There's no terrorists coming across the border. Long story short, I had about 4 years under Trump as a stand-up comedian where there was so many moments where I would get in arguments with either audience members or somehow it would go just wrong. And I learned the best thing to do, and this has become my technique. And if anybody wants to see, I have a clip on YouTube. Put Maz Jobrani drunk Trump heckler. And she wasn't an immigrant. She was a white lady. But I learned the way to deal with it is to Tai Chi it. You just let them talk. So this lady started going, I, as a woman, am offended. And whereas early on I was banging heads with my own people who had embraced this kind of whiteness, I learned to take anybody who comes at me, and I was like, wow, what a great country where a woman can have her opinion, and it's great that you as a woman are offended by my jokes. Listen, I only have 3 more Donald Trump jokes. You don't have to stay. You can go. And she was like, whoa. So I've learned to not argue with brown people and immigrants who embrace this type of whiteness, because I think that it's just this mentality. It's kind of this like exclusive, like I'm in the club now mentality, which is, I mean, I don't know what it's going to take. I don't know if it's going to take when, you know, the people who stormed the Capitol, if we were to have a civil war, I think that they think that somehow if there were a civil war, they'd be like, you guys are with us. I'd be like, no, your name is Muhammad. They're not going to pick you for their team. Like, you know, so anyway, that's been my...
I mean, that's the thing you write so much about, Waj. You write about this particular thing, and especially your parents' generation really buying into this idea.
Yeah, so what Maz was saying is right. We're talking about you chase whiteness unconsciously. So many people of color, not all, especially immigrants, they come to this country with nothing, right? Imagine my parents' generation, post 1965, and you realize, you look at the landscape, you're like, who's on the billboards? Who's in power? Who do they value? What's beautiful? Who does everyone like? Who's the protagonist of the narrative? White people. Who do they really hate in this country? Black people and poor brown people. I have to make a choice to survive. Which team am I going to choose? I'm going to run towards whiteness. I'll never be white. They'll never accept me, but maybe, just maybe, I can be an electron circling around the nucleus. See, there you go, mama. I did biology AP. You like that? That's a little science there for you. And so you chase whiteness and you adopt this poisonous model minority myth, right? I am, and this is exactly what Maz was saying, why a lot of people vote for Trump. I'm the good one. I came here the right way. I pulled myself from the bootstraps. I'm cultured and civilized. You darkies, you make us look bad. They're the savages. I'm the good one, right? I heard this from Latinos when I went and did reporting on Trump during the campaign. I went to a Trump campaign, spent 9 hours. It was an ocean of whiteness. Like every type of white you ever wanted to see in your life was there. Old white, young white, bearded white, tanned white, right? And all of them were like, he tells it like it is. And I also met some Latinos. I'm like, what the F are you doing here? And there was a Honduran refugee. She goes, I hate Clinton, and I came here the right way, and I waited my time, and all those undocumented, they have to go back. And you hear the Muslims, they say the same thing. And I always say this in the book, and I warn people of color and Muslims, you think you're part of the club until you're not. You're us until you're suddenly them. This country will turn on you on a dime. And if you don't believe me, I'll give you 2 quick examples. A lot of that generation, my generation, my father's generation, Rabia's parents, they did everything right, Tonya. Like Shohreh was saying, Daft Punk it, harder, better, faster, stronger, perfect, white teeth smiling, the good degrees, the Holy Trinity, make money, keep your head down, don't rock the boat. Did everything right. And overnight 9/11 happens and you're suddenly Saddam Hussein. You're suddenly Ayatollah. You're suddenly getting surveilled. You're suddenly getting deported. And then for the people who didn't learn after 9/11, they thought, oh, we elected our Muslim brother, Barack. Yay, the America's fine again. Go back, you darkies, you bad Muslims. They still didn't get the memo. Donald Trump comes and literally says, I'm going to do a Muslim ban. I think Islam hates us. And then many of them were like, oh, crap. This country still doesn't see me as American. I still have an asterisk next to my name. And if Donald Trump and this resurgence of white supremacy, which has always been here, but this death rattle, still hasn't convinced you that you are actually closer to blackness than whiteness, then like Maz says, man, I can't spend my time. I can't waste my time. I do dua for you. I'll pray for you. Enjoy some Maz Jobrani biryani and good luck.
Anya, can I say something to
Please
follow up
do.
on Wajahat? Yeah. So it's interesting because, you know, the immigrant experience is on a spectrum, right? So My experience growing up was like on the far end of the spectrum, where my parents were like, hell to the no, nobody is assimilating with anybody. You are not hanging out with white kids. You are not hanging out. The minute you get home from school, you're putting on Pakistani clothes. And like, they were very like, and you know, they were, and we grew up with the sense, my mom said it all the time, we might have to go back any minute now. We don't know how long we have it here. Like, so, you know, I mean, like my parents were always like, kind of in this mode where they're like, you never know when our time's going to be up. Like we could be, and part of that I think was because my mother had relatives in the UK who, you know, when in the 60s and 50s, 60s, 70s, you know, suddenly Pakis, you know, became a derogatory term, and they were like really abused and persecuted there and threatened. And she's like, that could be us any minute. And my mother always said, look at how Black people are treated in this country. She's like, don't get too comfortable. So no, I had a very different experience. And I think that does happen. And sometimes that can go really off the rails too. When you keep your children in such isolation that they have no opportunity to actually you know, become real citizens of the country.
I'm really curious about something. I want to talk with you guys about anger. And, you know, we have our calm soul here in Shohreh. But there's a list in the book on how to be a model of, say it, American.
American.
Rika.
A model American, as you put it, Waj. And without giving it all away, here are some of the things you write. Censor your baby's ethnic names, study white grievances, be the one token person of color at school or work who does all the work in educating everyone about history and culture and racism and diversity. I mean, the list is funny, but also infuriating because it's right on the money. And I'm just curious, Shohreh, how do you keep that anger from consuming you? All of the things that we're talking about, how do you keep that positive feeling and about our country?
I keep polishing myself. I keep learning. I keep studying. And I keep trying to understand logically, reasonably where we are and why certain things are happening. Try to find what the reasons are. And I guess I learned my lesson almost 35 years ago, back in the UK, in London. It was cold. I wasn't watching the pavement, walking, not watching properly. You know, my head was down. I was thinking. I wasn't in a good mood or whatever. I bumped into a British gentleman, and he immediately, he went back, took a good look at my face and said, go back to where you come from. You don't even know how to walk. And I couldn't help myself. And I said, well, sir, if your government had not interfered with my birth country's internal affair, I would have not been here. Therefore, you either have to take me or leave me. As of then, I noticed that, okay, he has a point there. He doesn't want to see me, a stranger in his country, a foreigner, as he called me. Then perhaps I was acting like a foreigner. Perhaps I should start acting like a native. That perhaps I should feel like, now that I'm paying tax in this country, I own a little bit of the land. So I feel like a little bit of this land belongs to me. So this is my home too. And as I mentioned, if I had not been driven out of my country, my birth country, I didn't have to be here. And then I started learning my lessons, polishing myself, learning how to walk, how to not to stare at people, and certain things that would make me feel like I belong to this land and a piece of this land belongs to me. And I started from there.
Tonya, can I say something real quick? Because Shohreh says something, and your question is pretty profound. The right to anger in this country is privileged. Not everyone has the right to be angry. Donald Trump, when I went and visited his rally, what people really loved about him was he tells it like it is. He shoots from the hip. He keeps it real. They loved the fact that he was politically incorrect. But this country lost its damn mind when Barack Obama wore a tan suit. Tonya, if you behaved like Donald Trump even once, you would lose your job. You would not have a career. If Robbie was angry, like some of the white men who, you know, accost her daily on social media, she would not have a podcast. Maz would be seen as the angry brown man. Like Shohreh would not have a career, right? And we self-police ourselves. That's what people don't realize. The conversation we're having right now is not vocalized. It's always internalized. I'll give you an example. I don't get angry, as you know. I don't swear. I don't get angry. I'm passionate. I just don't get angry. So I get on CNN and MSNBC and I'm passionate. I'm funny. And my own community members, people born and raised in this community, Muslims, South Asians, like, Wajahat, Wajahat, be careful. Don't appear too passionate. And I'm like, what are you talking about? They'll see you as angry, Wajahat. So just modulate it. And so think about that, self-policing yourself to blend in, self-censoring yourself, the way you act, the way you walk, the way you talk. When you even have righteous rage at this country telling you to go back, you know, like Shohreh had every right to be pissed off. She's like, mother effer, you go back. I was walking. But then she has to sit there and go, wait, no, let me modulate. And then you gaslight yourself. Maybe it's my mistake. Maybe I'm wrong. I apologize for walking. Forgive me for existing. These type of deep internalizations of being the other, we have to navigate, and we often do in silence. And we often don't talk about it. And you think about the amount of trauma and the amount of self-censorship that we engage in, and the fact that we realize, to be the mall minority, we have to be invisible. And let's just be okay with being invisible. Just think about that type of inheritance we give to our children sometimes also.
I think the difference is passion is great. I think you should be passionate. And if it doesn't matter what your ethnicity is, you should be passionate. You should be proud of it. You should have a point of view. I personally don't get as angry as I find myself shaking my head going like, oh my God, really? And because I almost pity these people. Like I pity the person who ran into Shohreh because they're so isolated. They've been surrounded by others who have, that person has not had the experience that we have had. Living in a major city for me is great because I have friends that are all different colors and all different sexes and sexual preferences, all of the above. And I always say, I go, people from, you know, that don't look like me can be some of the best people, and people that do look like me can be some of the biggest jerks. And so this person, sometimes I feel like, even like, let's take somebody as abominable as like a Marjorie Taylor Greene. I feel like she, if there were a way to surround her with some Persian food and some Pakistani hospitality, some biryani, if for no other, just give her some biryani and see what happens. My point is that I pity these people rather than going like, oh, you pissed me off. I'm like, oh my God, I'm sorry that you have to live as you. Because you're missing out on such a beautiful thing in this world, that are these brown people that bring their cultures and his sense of humor and her intelligence and her charm and your beauty. I mean, all of us, it's like, I think it's easy to get angry because you go, you person who came to me and said X, Y, and Z, you know, you need to, whatever, I'm going to punch you in the face. And that's you losing who you are. Who you are is beautiful. You are beautiful. You have a beautiful culture. You have a beautiful history. I love talking about Persian food and Persian politics and Persian history and you name it. I mean, Shohreh knows Iranians are proud of everything. We're like, oh, as our poets once said, you know, we love to talk about that stuff.
You guys also take credit for everything. We created the railroads.
Well,
I love the one. Wait, I love the one.
We did create it. Actually, we did create them.
We did. You name it, we created it.
Yeah. But I love Maz. There's the skit that your stand-up where you talk about parents going to parent-teacher conference for your kids and like being completely decked out and like you're like completely decked out and there's the white moms and dads in khakis.
That's again, we come from these cultures, like, because if you take us out of America and you put us back in our own countries, there is a sense of pride and formality and all that stuff. So you're right. When I was a kid, when they would show up decked out for the play. Like they went to the Metropolitan Museum, you know, they're going to the opera, and all the other parents would be like khakis and sandals and, you know, hippy dippy. But yeah, I think if you can find a way to not get angry, but almost feel pity for somebody, I think that I personally find that the right way for me to go.
But can you feel both? And I feel personally it's okay to feel both, but I mean both in that because there's so much power in whiteness and their ability to have such a profound impact on your life and the lives of your people. So with that, the anger stems around, it's not just you said you called me the N-word, for instance. It's like, no, there are systems in place that hold people down. And, so
I'm with you, Tonya. I am mostly fueled by rage. That's how my day. And I mean, the rage is about like exactly what you said, like the kind of things that people have to suffer because of these systems, the kind of things that people have to suffer because of ignorance. You can't work 25 years on a case without feeling some sense of rage, right? Hope is harder, but rage can keep you going for decades. Like if you need to make something happen and you're just angry about like, this injustice that somebody's suffering or whatever it is, or a system or just whatever, community problems, that can keep you going for a long time. I mean, all our community organizations, you have to operate a little there has to be some sense of, I don't know, for me, it's useful, not anger at individual people, but just like the sense of indignation, a deep indignation at something. And
Tonya, can I respond real quick? I think it's really interesting how we've had a diverse response to how we use it. And just for me in the book also, and just in life, the way I feel like it's a healthy emotion to be enraged with oppressive systems that commit injustice. It's like you're a human being. But then how do you choose to respond, right? And everyone has their own way of responding. What works for you? The way the analogy I give in the book, and this dates me because I'm so old, is oftentimes when people of color respond to these very real injustices, these very real double standards that, literally color our entire life and existence in America with the hyphen or the asterisk. Oftentimes we're told, don't be angry, but that's not going to work. Or when we respond like Daffy Duck. And if you ever watch the cartoon, what happens to Daffy Duck? He gets angry, he gets enraged, he gets nervous, but the anvil always drops on his head.
Right.
And for me, what I've chosen to do is I'm going to respond, but I'm going to respond like Bugs Bunny. And so if you ever watch the cartoons, go back and watch the cartoons. Bugs Bunny is always chilling. He's eating his carrot.
You are totally Bugs. Now that I'm thinking about it. Yeah.
Business. He's in the bunny hole, but Yosemite Sam keeps effing with him, right? Like Elmer Fudd keeps messing with him. So what he does is he uses their own traps against them. He does jujitsu. He teases them. He uses humor and comedy, right? He channels that anger in a way that dismantles his opponent and hopefully the systems. And for me, this is just me, the way I found to do that, I'm still responding. Hopefully I'm making some cracks within the system. I do it in a way where humor is cathartic and helps me release some of this pain. And also then humor sometimes, not always, but Maz knows this, he's the comedian, it releases endorphins. An audience that is otherwise hostile to listening to what we've been talking about today becomes more receptive to it. And at the very least for us, for people of color who have to live this, Shohreh has to live like literally being on the street and a guy telling her to go back, we are allowed some joy.
Yeah.
We're allowed to invest in some joy.
Right. Because anger will eat you up. Anger will kill you.
That's my problem with anger.
Yeah.
Tonya, that's my problem with anger. Because, and the fact that we have to be reasonable. We have to be logical. What are we angry about? Over what? Being angry over some people's stupidity? Why should I produce toxic? Because every time we get angry, our body produces toxic. Why should I do this to myself for someone else's stupidity or being out of line? Why should I not? Why can I not channel all this? Because anger has a certain energy, which is perfect for creativity. Channel it into creativity. Be creative rather than getting angry. Maneuver around whatever is happening or whoever you're trying to. Do whatever you can, but do not become angry because it doesn't solve anything. It just hurts you. And at the end, you're going to have a heart attack or, as a result. So that's why it's
what's good is to sometimes turn around and just cuss a little bit. Just cuss.
That's it. I do that. I do that when I'm alone. I go to a corner and I cuss badly. I'm like,
if I get like a tweet or something that's some idiot, like I don't jump on it. Maybe I walk around. I'm like, this stupid, and I go, MF and da 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 da, and it feels good. I'm like, okay. And then time goes by and I forget this person even existed. But it's
Yeah.
nice to cuss it out sometimes. It's good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
Cuss
just
it out.
I have a bowl of Maz biryani. That's all I do. I have some Maz biryani. Watch
Best.
Netflix.
The best.
Okay, two more topics before we go to questions from the audience. We're already at time, but Waj, you brought up children, and I want to bring that up. And also, Rabia, you brought up hope. So, in the context of the entire conversation, I'm just curious: as children of immigrants, how is this playing out with your children or the young people in your lives? Are these generational American curses, so to speak, still playing out? How are you able to navigate that with your young ones? I know your young ones, Waj, are pretty young.
Yeah, mine are 7, 5, and 2. And very quickly, like Rabia, my parents didn't give an F. They named me Wajahat to blend. They didn't teach me English, even though I was born and raised. Like, they didn't care at all. Like, I came home one day, I'm like, Mom, I want meatloaf. Like, we eat biryani. I'm like, Mom, I changed my name to Wilbur, like, you're Wajahat. So, like, in a very strange way, they like always flexed. And I wanted to teach my children to have pride in their roots and their caramel mocha skin. We gave them multisyllabic names. Like, we gave them hardcore names: Ibrahim, Khadija, and Nuseba, because I'm an English major, and also in our cultures, names have weight, they have meaning. And each name has a meaning to it. We chose it very deliberately. And in their name, I want them to have pride in their name and their roots. Your first question, how we connect the dots going back to our ancestors. And even though my wife and I have tried our best to say, listen, have faith in your roots, but don't be obnoxious about it. Realize you're one culture of many cultures. There's different shades of colors. There's different people, different ethnicities, different religions. Respect all of them, but this is who you are, and have pride and walk with pride, right? People say, I resisted Trump. And I always say, some of us walking out of the door with our head held high with dignity was our resistance. Just to do that, to live with joy, is an act of resistance. And so that's what we're trying to cultivate. But I'll say this is how insidious the whiteness is my beautiful daughter, Nuseba, who's a cancer survivor. We have tried our best. Brown dolls, black dolls, Princess and the Frog, Miss Marvel. Tony, you know how it is. You got kids, right? Like everything. And then a couple of months ago, I wrote about this in New York Times. She goes, Baba, I wish I had light skin tone. Light skin tone is beautiful. And I was just like a punch in the gut. And I'm like, Sarah, how did the whiteness get through our barriers? How? We had the fortress. And you internalize it. And so I'm like, hands-on meeting. I got all like the grandparents, I got Rabia and other friends on WhatsApp. And like, we just bombarded. We're like, you're beautiful, you're kind, you're smart. And then now, thank God, Encanto came, and all of them are brown skin. And she's obsessed with Isabella. Her dress came today. She's right now in the other room with flowers in her hair with the Isabella dress. And then a couple months ago, she looked at me and she goes, Baba, I love my brown skin. So it's one of those things where my wife and I realize that just because now she says, I love my brown skin, this is going to be a lifelong challenge.
Oh, yeah.
Hating your nose. Just think, this is how insidious whiteness is very quickly. You look in the mirror and you learn to hate your nose. You look at your hair, you want to straighten it. You look at your eyes, you want to change it. You look at your beautiful skin color that people literally go to tanning salons to get, and you want to make it white. You wear a Fair and Lovely cream. It gets internalized. So what we try to do in a non-chauvinistic way is have faith, have pride in your roots, love yourself, have joy, and also realize there are other people who are different, and that's okay. Like Maz said, we're all part of this bouillabaisse, right? And we live in this multicultural democracy, and you're a Muslim and other people aren't, and it's okay. But have faith that inshallah, you too can be an American. And the final thing I'll say is, I tell them this, I've been telling this always. I said, you go for the appetizers, the main course, the cheese, the chai, the desserts, you go for everything. You go for everything. Everything belongs to you, inshallah. And why not? Why can't they dream big? Why can't our generation and our children dream big?
Yeah.
Waj, I don't think I said we're all the same. I think I said we all fart, but we just call it a different thing.
Right. Absolutely. Okay. Hope. Let's talk about hope. I mean, really, your answer was about hope. But you say in your book, Waj, that, the US is a wacky place. Actually, you say it's insane, the duality of it. I mean, but you still have hope for it. That I want to hear from all of you. Like, do you have hope that this country will live up to its own aspirations? I'll start with you, Rabia.
I have hope that there is always the opportunity to be better in this country. Will we ever live up to our ideals? does anybody? Does
Right.
any nation? Does any human being? I can't even get up and work out at the same time every morning. Come on. So, but you know, you have what gives me hope in this country is the fact that there are mechanisms in place that allow me to fight for what I think is right, to use my voice. That, and you know, look, I'm a person of faith. I come from a background where many years ago, I remember I was a burnt out activist, and this one woman who's a theologian said to me, "Listen, Rabia, you're going to be burnt out because that's the world. I mean, if it was perfect, we'd be in heaven right now. So you just got to keep working. You just got to put one foot in front of the other, do your best." And, you know, and also, you know, Wajahat knows we come from a faith tradition that says, even if it's literally the end of the world and you're planting a plant, just finish planting it. Like, that's what we're taught. So, you know,
I
not to
love
have
that.
hope is like an act of faithlessness for us, for me. Yeah.
Maz.
Well, they keep saying a civil war is coming. So on the one hand, I got that in the back of my mind. But on the other hand, I do have, my hope is in my kids and in the younger generation. I feel that no matter what the reaction is right now from the people on the right or people that want to make America great again and go backwards, just momentum is moving forward. So if you look at the progress we've made, whether it's with the rights for gay people to get married, or the rights for interracial marriage, or many things that have happened. You're starting to see slowly but surely people of different backgrounds in executive positions. We need to have more and more of that. But eventually, you know, I remember with my own kids, they have friends that are all different ethnicities. Our neighbor from our previous home, where my son, like for his first 10 years of his life, the husband was black, wife was white. The ethnicity was never an issue. They just get along with each other. And so the hope is in this future that these kids will get past color, they'll get past religion, ethnicity. Doesn't matter who you are. I either like you or I don't like you, and hopefully I'm good to you. I'm good to each other. So I've always been a hopeful person. I do think that we will, no matter what, move forward. And it's always weird to me because, again, a lot of my hope is in the young people. And it's always weird for me to see young people who act conservative. Somebody pointed this out because there's like, I guess Ben Shapiro's sister is like in her early 20s or something. And some commentator made a great point. He was saying, these people are in their early 20s and they're talking like they're 70 or 80. Like when you're in your 20s, you're supposed to be rebellious and progressive and let's go for it. And then later in life you go, screw it, I don't want to pay taxes, I'm going to go be conservative. So it's always, to me, it's always a very strange thing to see young people who are closed-minded, and I just don't understand that at all. But I would say majority of young people are open-minded and progressive, and I'm putting it all on their shoulders. I give up. It's all
I want to, before we hear from Shohreh, I want to ask you guys though, you know, one thing that I'm seeing, and I want to test this theory, I'm seeing that, of course, young people are radical and progressive and they're pushing. And then I also see our generation is radical, more radical than our parents were at this age. What is the future when you have parents and children who are both radical? Like, what does that mean for our future?
That's a radical future. That's a
Right.
radical future. Yeah, baby.
Right.
No, it just means I think we're evolved. We're going to keep that's the hope. That's the problem.
Yep.
See, the problem that these people have that are trying to steal votes right now, they're trying to limit the rights for people to vote. No matter what you do, the numbers are growing in the progressive direction. And I think that's part of what their fear causes, the fear that they say, you know, these people, we're trying to, you know, these people are taking our jobs, and immigrants and Black Lives Matter. They're against everything because they fear that they have that whole replacement theory idea, right? Which in reality, no person of color is coming and going like, I'm going to replace you, get out of here. We're saying, let's exist together. Let's move forward together. Let's be open-minded. Let's accept each other. But they do a good job of flipping it and making it seem like they are being like, we're out to take over, you know? And so,
I wonder
I'll let
if
someone else
any of you guys ever have a plan B. Do you have a plan B? Like, I got a Canadian relative who can sponsor me.
No, No plan B, but I have lots of hopes in this country. In this beautiful, vast country with visionary people. There is a paragraph in Wajahat's book. It's right after his father has been deported, and he's seeing a lawyer right before
He's deported. Yeah.
he leaves,
Mhm.
before he's deported. And Wajahat says that an American racism, another American kindness helped chart our future here in this country.
Mm.
So we are going to face both and
Right.
deal with both and try to reason with both until we get to the point that Maz was referring to the utopia that we're all waiting for. And if anywhere in this big vast world this is going to happen, it has to be here,
Mm.
America.
Mm. Mm. What wise ending words. Let's get to some questions now. Andrea.
Andrea's
Yes.
lost. The book swallowed Andrea.
Wait, start my video. Yeah. Okay. It says, all right, now this has been such an amazing program. And we've gotten 1,000 questions. I think I can say safely that we've gotten more questions on this program than any other program in our virtual time in the last 2 years. It's been quite a busy hour. Okay, so I'm going to start with this one. And I'm only going to do a few because you guys have answered so many that have come in. As a person of color, I've experienced some white people in my life who see me as their token non-white friend. What's been your experience addressing the complexities of interracial friendships? And that's for as many of you as it was basically for everybody. So, have at it.
Maybe let's start with Waj.
Well, it's one of those situations where after 9/11, my generation, much like Rabia's generation, we were just blitzkrieged. And I was a college student, I was 20 years old, trying to figure out what to do with the rest of my life. And overnight, because I was part of the Muslim Student Association, I now became like many of us in that role, the cultural ambassador of all things Muslimi, the Muslim walking Wikipedia entry.
Mhm.
And I actually had that role growing up. I was oftentimes the token Muslim, the token Pakistani, because there's this old quote. I'm going to do a throwback to Who Framed Roger Rabbit, where Jessica Rabbit says, "I can't help it. I'm just drawn that way." I was drawn very Muslimy, very Dacian, and very American. That's just how I am. So I exuded biryani and like lentils and bad geography. And so, I was often the Muslim friend and South Asian friend for so many of I went to all boys Catholic school. And so their only connection to this thing called Muslim or Pakistan was Wajahat, just by virtue of my friendship. And so the interesting thing is that I always represented, not because I'm like, I am a billboard for Islam or Pakistan. It was just who I was. Like if you came to my home, my mom would be making like dal chawal and you would eat it, right? Like I'm fasting during Ramadan just because I am. I'm also like crushing on Jennifer Lopez, just like normal stuff. And in that normal interaction and friendship, people realize, oh, this is my friend named Wajahat, who's also Muslim and Pakistani. So as a result, when the Trump Muslim ban happened, I got this amazing Facebook message from one of my friends who went to elementary school with me. Then I met him again in college and I hadn't talked to him for years. And he said, everything that you used to talk about and write about and warn us about, those horrors are coming to America. I'm sorry I didn't take it seriously, but I just want you to know that me and my girlfriend will be going to the airport to protest the Muslim ban. And I sat there, I'm like, wow, I never was like a walking week. He was just my friend. And to know that impact that had, right? So that's you just being yourself, the best version of yourself, not performing. The other part of it, and this is where I mentioned this in my book a lot, why it's sometimes suffocating and exhausting to be the token. What I said is I want a relationship, and any relationship requires reciprocity. You cannot expect your Persian friend, your hijabi friend to do all the work in bad faith. I have smartphone, but I'm not going to Google about moderate Islam or the hijab. You teach me everything because I'm lazy. And then even if you teach me stuff, I'm still going to be ignorant. And I'm like, you know what? I'm done with that. I'm also done with the moderate Muslim stereotype that asks me to condemn violent acts done by violent people I have never met. And no matter how much we condemn, no matter how hard and fast we condemn, it's never enough. It's like what Toni Morrison said. That's the problem of addressing racism. You always have to prove yourself to this jury that always sees you as a savage. And after a while, you're like, I'm too tired. I'm too old. I'm too talented. I got too much to do. And so you need to make that choice. Is my entryway here or in my investment going to lead to a conversation where I can change some minds? Or is this me wasting my time and energy on a bad faith person who's too lazy? Modulate that. And I think by being aware of it, you'll be saving yourself a lot of time and energy. And like I said, you get rid of the anger. You're like, I don't got time for it. I got to watch Netflix. But the flip side, because I know a lot of the young people are tapping out. Don't tap out. Have some faith in some people. Some people just don't know. They're just ignorant. They're not evil. They're not malicious. They just don't know. And if they can see you as a person where they can like air some of this out, like, hey, I hope you don't mind, but I heard this about Iran. I don't want to be politically incorrect, but can I ask you, Shohreh? And Shohreh says, go ahead and ask me. I know your heart's in the right place. I have seen that you can be like Leonardo DiCaprio in Inception. You could put like that spinner in their head and change their perception. So you asked me a simple question. I hope that was a useful answer.
Right.
Anybody else? On
Well,
that?
go ahead, Maz. I'm sorry.
No, you go.
No, it's my motto is be yourself. Let the world see through you. When you're organic and sincere and truthful, at least to yourself, then people would know how to deal with you. Be yourself.
I would say, to piggyback on that, I actually see it as a I won't say compliment, but it's an opportunity.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So when somebody asks me as the token, number one, I always, and I keep talking about food, I always go to the food. Like if I've gone to comedy clubs and brought Persian food and been like, hey, Merry Christmas, and given a bunch of Persian food. And the next day everyone's going, wow, you guys have really good food. I go, I know, Persian food. And I'm thinking to myself, that's a point for my people. I got a point for us.
Kubide gets you a slam dunk.
Kubide, Ghormeh sabzi. Or the other thing to realize is you know a lot more than they do about your history, your culture. And it blows my mind when I've done radio shows, I've done interviews, like when a couple years ago when they under the Trump administration they killed the General Soleimani. My friend Whitney Cummings, who's a comedian, had me and this former CNN anchor Jessica Yellen on there on her podcast, and we were explaining to her about Iran, and it blows my mind because we grew up, we know our community, we know our culture, even a little bit, but a lot of people don't. So when you start sitting there, you're like, yeah, 1953, America had a coup d'etat and they overthrew Mossadegh. They go, what? We did? Yes, you did. And then this happened, and then that happened, and then Iranians are, and you just get into it, and they go, oh my God. I'm thinking to myself, oh wow, I know more than this person about this. So it's an opportunity. And the last thing I'll tell you, these are practical techniques you can use. Number one is the food. Number two is talk about your history. Number three, teach them fun words from your background or culture. Like swear words are the
Swear
best.
words. Yeah, everyone wants to know swear words.
You want to make friends, teach them swear words. They will remember it. I have friends I taught swear words back from when we were in 4th grade. And to this day, they will still, like when we talk, they're like, hey, what's up? Fill in the swear word. And it's a great way to go. So swear words, food, and history, it's an opportunity.
Rabia.
Yeah. Same question?
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, okay. No, I mean, I agree. I think we all are on the same page here. You have to be authentic. And for some of us, there's no point in not being authentic. I'm never going to pass for white. I'm never going to pass for anything but a brown woman with a hijab on. And obviously there are going to be relationships you get into sometimes when it feels like the other person doesn't really want to be uncomfortable and know too much about you. They want to have some boundaries. But another thing I've learned, and I'm going to add this to the very useful list that Maz provided, is to invite people into your home. I do this all the time, all kinds of people. I cook them my home cooked food, but I invite them in my home so they can just see like my crazy house and my cats and my kids and my, so they can relate to me as a human being. And I think it's just about being authentic. And But yeah, you do have to, at some point, you have to like, like really evaluate relationships. And if there isn't the reciprocity there, if there isn't the authenticity there, and you're actually feeling like a token and you're not able to make a change, then maybe you need to not be in that relationship anymore.
This is the perfect question. I mean, the question that I just asked that came in from the audience was the perfect question to end on. And I really do think we are out of time, but I want to go to Waj to end it, and to ask if there's anything that you left out, any great story that you left out that ended up on the cutting room floor, so to speak, that you can tell us, or something like, anything you want. Your book is so wonderful. Remember, everybody, Skylight Books has these books, and I think, Waj, you signed them, if I'm not mistaken.
I believe I did, and so I signed it for you. Oh, you random person who's watching right now, just for you.
Right.
But I just want to say thank you so much for everyone. There's like 330 people who stuck around. There was like up to 400 people. There was no rehearsal for this. I met Tonya. Like, look at this, is a very deliberate makeup. I felt like we talked about food a lot today, and the book ends with this metaphor of the expanding table, the buffet, the potluck, and that the only way we're going to make it in America, which is the multiracial democracy, is if you expand the table and include the rest of us. So you have the biryani next to the sabzi, next to the meatloaf, which is a mysterious but fascinating dish I want to eat one day, next to the bean pie, right? But not only that, that you extend your hand and invite that person who isn't invited to the table to come have a seat. That's the only way. You need a generous spirit. And because we're storytellers, another analogy I gave is you have to expand and push the American narrative to include the rest of us as co-protagonists. Ma said this, we're not trying to replace you. We just want to be co-protagonists and tell our story. You don't have to like my story. It's okay, but just let me tell my story and you tell your story. And maybe once in a while, our kids can hang out at the park. And if not, that's fine too. And this type of group came together. I'm like, who would be an interesting mix and match of folks? And I reached out to them and they all said yes. So Maz and Shohreh and Rabia and Tonya, and we had no prep beforehand. And I think it's like when you bring together a tasty dinner party and it goes well. Like, and I said, and then someone asked me, Tanya's like, yeah, I was just told to show up. So hopefully this works out. And Rabia's like, you just said show up. And when you're planning a dinner, sometimes you're like, if you bring the right people, even though if they're different, come from different backgrounds, but if they have the same generosity of spirit, magic happens. And I think that's a good metaphor for this country. I still believe magic can happen in America. I'm not, my eyes aren't closed. I'm not a wide-eyed optimist. I'm a pragmatist. I know the horrors that we face. But as Rabia mentioned, even if you see the day of judgment around the corner, plant a seed. And in my life, as you read the book, and as Shohreh's life, and Rabia and Maz, they've gone through a lot. Tanya's gone through a lot. Each time I think where we feel like it's over, we're at the edge of the cliff. The cliff is going to fall. Sometimes there's a plot twist. The page turns and there's a better story. And if you're telling me not to invest in hope, then you're saying you're investing in apathy and cynicism, which is cheap and lazy. And investing in hope is painful because it means the country that you love will betray you, that people in this country will betray you, that they'll tell you to go back. But I refuse to give up. I have children in this country, and I refuse to give them the inheritance that you will be righteous victims and you will suffer. Instead, I'm going to say this country belongs to you. Inshallah, you make your biryani, you earn your seat at the table, and then when you get at the table, your job isn't done. Your job is to reach around and grab someone else's hand and bring them to the table. It's the only way we're going to move forward. So we wanted to model that intention and that spirit in this conversation. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for Andrea for hosting us. Thank you for Salam for the kind words. Your check is in the mail, Salam, because I know you're old like me with the kids' Venmo. And the final story I'll tell you that I had to cut. Such a beautiful story only for you guys. Exquisite. Stay for 30 seconds. I'm at Aspen, all right? I've had a very interesting life. I visited Santa Rita Penitentiary and visited my parents. I visited billionaires in Aspen, which is why I think I have a very unique perspective into this thing called America. I'm in Aspen a couple years ago. General Petraeus is there, all right? General Petraeus. General Petraeus is bumbling around looking for something. My superpower is I can go talk to anybody. I don't care. So I'm like, General Petraeus, here's my friend Haris Tareen. He's Afghan. He's working at DHS. He wants to meet you. Haris was like humble at first. He goes, oh, thank you, Wajahat, for the introduction. General Petraeus, mind you, who was in the Middle East, in Afghanistan and Pakistan. General Petraeus listens to me and he goes, where did you say your family's from? I said, from Pakistan. He goes, I missed the accent. It was so melodious. Can you do the accent for me? And I'm like, what? And Haris was like, he's my friend. He was teasing me. He goes, do the accent, Wajahat. He does a fantastic accent. Now I'm like, mother effer. So then I do this character where I criticize the war and terror in the accent. He doesn't understand the dark humor. Then he cranes his neck and looks to Haris and goes, and where did you say you're from? He goes, Afghanistan. Can you do the accent? And I said, Haris, do the accent. And Haris says, I forgot the language. So that's General Petraeus, ladies and gentlemen. He asked us to be tokens. And we decided, you know what? My friend decided I'm peacing out. And I decided to act like Bugs Bunny, but it was lost on the audience. I had to cut that story. A juicy story. It's for the next book, but I gave it to you guys.
That could have been the title of your book. Do the accent.
Right, exactly. Do the accent. That's the next book.
Do the accent.
That's the next book.
Thank you so much. Tonya, you're a genius moderator. All of you, this was a glorious program. And on behalf of Writer's Block, I'm so honored and I loved every second of it. Thank you. And I appreciate it. I look forward to seeing all of you soon.
Thank you, Andrea. Thank you so much.
Congratulations. And we have to go check out Maz's role in that, his one little bit role where he dies. You gotta look it up and find it.
Maz's role.
With Brianni.
Tanya's new podcast, buy Rabia's upcoming memoir, and in binge The Expanse, where Shohreh crushes it.
Oh my gosh.
Oh yeah, and buy my book.
Buy the book.
Yeah. At Skylight. Thank you.
Thank you guys.
Bye-bye.